Hi, my name's Barry Corless, Business Development Director for Best Practice here at Global Knowledge in the UK. I'm here today to answer one of the questions that I probably get asked the most, and that's around ITIL training. Who do I target? What training should I be doing? First thing we're going to do is look at the ITIL qualifications themselves, and it starts at the bottom here with ITIL Foundation, leading on to intermediate qualifications where we've got what are called the life cycle and capability tracks. The life cycle track mirroring the ITIL volumes of service strategy, service design, service transition, service operation and continual service improvement. The capability courses are more of a mix. Release control and validation, planning, protection and optimization, service offerings and agreements, and operational support and analysis. They lead on to people becoming ITIL experts once they've passed MALC, managing across the life cycle, and onward into the ITIL Master, which is more about credentialing than actual new learning. So they're the courses we're going to talk about in this next little session. So probably the question I get asked more than anything after ITIL Foundation is, should I do life cycle or should I go capability? So what we're going to do is attempt to answer that now. I think the first thing I've got to say is this is just guidance, and there's an old saying there by Douglas Bader that I'm particularly fond of. Rules are for the obedience of fools and the guidance of wise men. So don't take everything that I'm saying here as absolutely this is what you must do. But this is just some guidance, I think, to help you decide should you do life cycle or should you do capability once you go on to do ITIL Intermediate. So I've got 4 areas that I think you really should concentrate on when you get to the intermediate level. The first one is within your organisation, the maturity of your ITIL processes already. If your organisation's well developed and your ITIL processes have been operating for a few years, you're used to using them and the language, then it might well be that the management aspects of the life cycle courses are probably the ones that are better to concentrate on. They're more about the management, the integration and the improvement of the various ITIL life cycle phases. If your process is still developing, then it might be that the capability courses would offer more to you, as they've got a more granular level of detail and process detail within them. The next one is about the seniority of the staff, and there's a very general rule that the more senior you are within an organisation, then you're more likely to be in a position where the life cycle courses are going to better reflect your role rather than the capability. Again, it's only a very general rule, but one worthy of noting. My third one is whether you're an internal IT department or an outsourcer or managed service provider. Managed service providers, by their very nature, tend to deal with many customers and different processes, and it's more likely that the integration aspects of the life cycle would be better suited to their needs. Internal IT, particularly subject matter experts, are likely to find capability courses perhaps more useful. Again, it's their low-level granular detail that sometimes can be very helpful. The final one of my 4 intermediate tips and guidance areas is around whether you are actually a process practitioner or a process manager. And if you certainly want to know more about the low-level process detail in each of the areas, then it's probably the capability courses that are going to provide that. I guess the last thing I would say is, please, if in doubt, ask us. The next question I get asked is, well, who in the organisation should be doing the different courses? What I've got here is a typical view of an IT department, very stylised obviously, but we've got there a head of IT, an IT director or a CIO at the top. Sat underneath it, I've got development people there with a head of development, DBAs, programmers and so on one side. I've got on the other side the support people. You might have a head of service support, an operations manager, and sat underneath them various departments, maybe service desk, desktop, network, servers, and so on. And finally, I've got there in the middle a service management, quality, governance department. So who should sit what within that particular very stylized IT department? I think firstly, the first thing to say is that foundation is generally acceptable for everybody in the department. It gives everybody the same language, the same understanding of service management, and it is a great starting point. The only people I've not introduced there is the head of IT, the CIO, who may not go as far as the actual ITIL Foundation, perhaps doesn't need the qualification, but may certainly want some awareness. So you might look at a senior overview perhaps for those heads of, those department heads, head of development. They could be people that would look at that senior overview, although of course that's not examined in the same way that the foundation is. And then we move on to the intermediates. Now for intermediates, I think you're more often than not going to be targeting the heads of the team leads in your various departments. So if you can see there, I've actually drawn the box just cutting into the top of desktop service desk. So things like your service desk manager, your service desk team leads, your desktop team leads, desktop manager, process owners in those particular areas, then they're the people that you might well target for intermediate level studies. Breaking that down a little bit further, what I'm going to show now are what probably would be considered the primary must-have courses in those particular areas. And I'm going to start with the support people. On the support side, then you're probably looking at operational support and analysis if you're looking at a capability course which covers incident management, problem management and so on, or if you're following the life cycle, its closest relative would be service operation. Perhaps interesting and useful for people in that operational area as well would maybe be service transition, which touches on release management, touches on change management, configuration management and so on. So service transition from the life cycle, or indeed release control and validation from the capability side of things. Moving across to the other side and to development, then perhaps the service design or the service transition courses might be very, very useful, alongside the planning, protection and optimization course from the capability track. Probably also the service offerings and agreements from that side of the house as well might be quite a useful course for them. Again, it doesn't stop them sitting the other courses, but they're probably primarily the must-haves for them in that particular area. Which leaves us with the service management, the quality, the governance people in the middle. I guess people who are called service managers or service delivery managers, then absolutely anything goes for those guys, and that obviously includes service offerings and agreements, continual service improvement, service strategy, pretty much any of the ITIL courses for those guys, and they may be the ones that you consider taking all the way through to becoming the ITIL experts. So that's just a little bit of guidance on what I think should be the primary courses for people in those particular areas. Again, if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to contact us, which you can do via info@globalknowledge.co.uk.